delighted to have Anni Cyrus back with us again. Anni, thank you so much for your time today.
Absolutely, my pleasure. It's been a while.
That's exactly what I was thinking. It has been a while. And current events bring us together with the madness and chaos over in the Middle East. And who better, I thought, than asking on is Anni Cyrus. So, but first, people can find you at Live Up to Freedom. Tell us about your show. Just give the viewers, if they don't follow you, give them a taster of what they can find and what you put out.
Absolutely. So, Live Up to Freedom, which is also the name of my show, we produce 2 shows a week at the moment, hoping to somehow get to 5 days a week. But majority of information that is produced on Live Up to Freedom is related to Middle East, Islamization, Sharia, and the dangers of red-green axis. 90% of the time, this is the type of educational programming. I don't force my opinion, but I will give you evidence from the Quran, from the Sirah, from the Surah, every single one evidence coming from their own word, proving the fact that the possibility of us coexisting, not really possible.
I'm with you 100%. And I do want your opinion full force. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to getting your thoughts. But maybe I can ask you, we have watched what has happened with Israel, obviously, and then watch what has happened with Iran responding. Most of the viewers, whether they're US based or UK based, have zero concept of how Iran fits in the Middle East. They may have an understanding of, if they know history, of the Persian Empire. So it is a history that stretches back thousands of years. But today, few people in the West have an idea, I guess, of how Iran fits in. But obviously, you're Iranian born. You live in the States at the moment. Maybe just touch on that about Iran and how it fits in with that, I guess, illustrious history over the thousands of years. How does Iran kind of fit into the Middle East jigsaw?
Sure. So let me start from here. Since you brought up the Persian Empire, let me just set the record straight about Persians versus Persian Empire. There's this thing going on lately that Persians don't exist because Persia doesn't exist. I want to make it very clear. Iran, as you know it today, is what was of Persia. So by nationality, we are Iranians. By race, we are Persians. Why is this important? Because there's a difference between nationality and race. And that's where actually we get all confused between racism if you criticize Islam, because a lot of nations now carry Islam. If you say something against Islam, their race isn't Islam. Their race could be Persian, could be Indian, could be Arab. Now, Arab race has a breakdown against Syrian Arabs, have their own DNA. Saudi Arabian Arabs have their own DNA. However, there's one group of Arabs that don't have DNA, Peter, and that is Palestinians. The reason it's important to say we're Persians, nationality Iranian, is because we can make the point of there is no such a race as Palestinians. If you would do a DNA test on anyone in Palestine claiming to be Palestinian, you would find the DNAs of Syrian Arabs, you would find Iraqi Arabs, you would find a Palestinian race. Now, I'm going to pull a leftist here and say, if you're willing to call them Palestinian by race, well, I identify Persian, so you're going to call me a Persian. That being said, Persian Empire down to smaller size to today, which is the tiny bit of Islamic Republic of Iran, has operates. That's why it's the heart. You go back, we're not going to even go 2,700 years ago. Let's not do that. We could. Cyrus the Great, king of Persia, freed the Jews in Babylon, told them you're free, and there you go. Temple Mount is there. That's how much Persia or Iran has been the heart. All the resources Iran has, and I'm just going to name a few. Iran is number one land of making saffron. We have the second top quality pistachio. I'm not going to even go into the oil industry because everybody. And then, considering between Afghanistan and Iran, you have the 2 only countries producing opium. Well, I know some people misuse it, but it still is important material we need. So with all the resources, Iranian people, more than 82%, are living life under the line of poverty by international standards. Same thing with the neighbors. You got the Turkey, you got Pakistan, you got Afghanistan, Azerbaijan. That is how much Iran's operation has affected not only in Middle East, but over here with Western countries. I hope that answered the question.
Oh, it does. That I want to go back because we look at Islam in connection with Iran, but if you go, I mean, long time prior to the Islamic Revolution in was 79, you've got from different breakups of the kingdom, and before that, you'd from I think from the 20s, the what Iranian state. So Islam was not in it. Tell us kind of how Iran kind of fits into that, where it's now known as the Islamic Republic of Iran, but before that, Islam wasn't in the name. Does that mean Islam was not part of the culture?
Yes. So if we go back, way back, about 2,700 years ago, all the way to about 1,800 years ago, that period of time, majority of Iranians were known as Zoroastrians. There were some other, atheists. There were Jews. There were, Christians. All that. But then the Battle of Muhammad started 1,400 years ago. Now, what was Battle of Muhammad? Muhammad started from Mecca, then went to Medina, then conquered Saudi Arabia. Now, who was the competition? Who was the biggest challenge? Persian Empire. Persia was standing up. They even sent messengers to the king of that time saying, have your people convert to Islam and we'll leave you alone. The king was like, no, we're good. We're not going to force anybody. So the very first attack of Islamic attack, which in history books, you read them as Arab attacks. Yes, there were Saudi Arabians, but the attack wasn't about race. It had nothing to do with land versus land or people versus people. It was Muhammad continuing the conquer of Islamization to basically, the global caliphate, which then global was just that area. The first attack happened. They couldn't conquer. The second one couldn't conquer, on and on and on and on for a long time. In meantime, some of the Iranians or Persians decided to convert by choice, until one of the Iranians who by choice converted decided to become a traitor and basically start cooperating with the Arabs. That was the first time, I want to say about probably 800, 700 years ago, is when the first time of conquering people of Persia happened. A lot of Zoroastrians escaped. They went to India. That's why you see somewhat the biggest population of Zoroastrians are found in India. They took refuge in India. Some converted, some were killed, some became dhimmis and gradually either converted or died. And fast forward all the way to almost, I want to say, 92 years ago, when one of the kingdoms of Iran, under Qajar, or you guys pronounce it Qajar dynasty, they actually ruled under Islam. The king in the kingdom decided we will rule under. The full hijab came to the country. The full mosque building started. And then Pahlavi dynasty returned that. They didn't get rid of Islam, but they did return the country into America, freedom of religion. If you want to be a Muslim, be a Muslim. You want to be Christian, be Christian, anything. Until the first king, Pahlavi, decided to actually ban Sharia in Iran. Nobody was allowed to wear hijab. Mosques were shut down. And surprise, surprise, England and France got involved and told him that you're going to lose power if you don't give them their freedom back. So the decision was the father will step down, the son will take over, and they will allow Sharia to continue. On top of that, they will allow one representative of Islam or Muslim community of Iran to step into Congress. The rest is history. Literally 20 years later, Islamic Revolution happened, and it has never went back.
But it's not just Iran, I guess, it has a history. I think Egypt having a long history, Lebanon, I know reading the Bible and you hear about the cedars of Lebanon. Then you think of Saudi Arabia and you think of the House of Saud. But long time before that, there were different emirates in that area. And some of those countries have been artificially created, maybe it's like Jordan, but other countries actually have got a history of thousands of years. How does that work in, because as a Brit, I think of Europe and the struggle with the nations in Europe for dominance, with France, Spain, with the UK. What is that kind of struggle like in the Middle East with those countries that have a long history?
Well, another country we can name is Afghanistan.
Yeah.
If you look, Afghanistan is pretty recent conquer of Islamization. Right around 79 when Iran was conquered, very shortly before that, Afghanistan was conquered. Afghanistan has a long history of battling back and forth. And by the way, I sometimes feel like people of Afghanistan are not getting the credit they deserve. They have such a long and pure history, cultural, music involved, and art involved. They have some of the most unique musical instrument you find out there that is now westernized and used, but nobody knows because everybody thinks Afghanistan was, Islamic country from day one, and Afghans were all Muslim. That is not what it is. Now, the battle with Saudi Arabia, you need to realize when Muhammad, came up and said, "I am the prophet." The majority of people in Saudi Arabia were I can't pronounce the English when you believe in more than one god, polygamous.
Yeah,
Is that the word?
Polytheism. Or
There you go,
yeah,
polytheism. That's so. With Saudi Arabia, there is a much deeper root of Islam. It was literally the first introduced religion
hmm,
that unified the country. It did, or nation. But the rest of Middle Eastern countries, those who are not, as you said, artificial, those that existed, they were none of them has any roots. None of them. That's the thing. Sometimes we have this saying in Middle East, it's like, "Oh, you're just a Muslim born," meaning you're not really Muslim. And I'm like, that doesn't exist. It doesn't, because nobody, the root except Saudi Arabia, there's no other race or nation that was the start. So the struggle for every single Middle Eastern country back and forth between the Islam. Now, again, I even during the Pahlavi kingdom, Peter, nobody minded Muslims. Nobody did, because it wasn't the constitution. You wanted to be a Muslim, be a Muslim. But then on the other end of the city, you would find, restaurants and bars and concerts and women with short skirt. The struggle in Middle East, even as recent as 2 years ago with Afghanistan, it's the matter of literally forcing this Islam into the country rather than allowing it, which is one of my main arguments of, if this religion is such a religion of peace, why is it that wherever it goes, it's force, fear, blood involved? If it's so peaceful, why can't they get people to convert on their own, but rather have to force them to do it? So that has been the struggle of last literally 1400 years. Today, you find people from Saudi Arabia who reject Sharia. They don't want their constitution to be Sharia anymore. Now, do we have Sharia-based constitution in Western countries? No. But are many of them already living life under Sharia? I would say, for example, London is a great city to name. I have not been to London because they won't let me come to England. But the last time I left London was January of 2011. And sometimes when I look at some of the videos or live feeds coming from London, I'm like, that's not where I was. That's not what I remember of London. So, not to make it even longer than I did, if Western countries don't realize that there need to be an absolute cap and limitation, the struggle of Middle East will start coming here, where you constantly have the battle of Islamization, de-Islamization, Islamization, de-Islamization, and gradually the culture will disappear. I hate to say it, when I look at my fellow Iranians today, there isn't much of Persian culture left anymore. It's something of a confused Arab versus Persian versus Sharia versus Western. It's a very mixed up, where sadly you can't really pinpoint anything left of that land or country or culture and behavior of the people. Half of the Farsi they speak, I don't even understand. I'm like, what is that? Any of the leaders, they started talking. I'm like, okay, you're not speaking Farsi. It's full on Arabic at this point.
Tell me I'm when I talk, and I want to get up to the current day where we are, but I'm curious because I talk to a lot of my African friends, especially in church, and you realize that African nations are tribal based, and there is more allegiance to the tribe than there is to the nation. We look at Nigeria, and it's completely separated on tribal lines. What is it like for a country like Iran? Iran is a large country, nearly 90 million. It's so it has influence in that regard. How does it work when people call themselves Iranian, or me? How does it work prior to the Islamic Revolution 79? Where is that kind of identity and connection for Iranians who lived there prior to the revolution?
That's actually an interesting question. One of the top things I did a few years ago, one of the things I mentioned about Iran that many people are not aware of is majority of Iranians are actually bilingual by about age 9 or 10, because Iran, as of today, is still it has. If you look at the map, the south versus northeast versus west, they are tribes, not the African style of tribe, but they do have their own tribes where you have the courts who are still within their own culture. Their customs are still the old school traditional Kurdish. They speak the Kurdish language at home, and then they speak the Farsi language, which is the country's language. And then you have the Turks in Tabriz and some those areas. Again, the food and the music and the language is the Turkish. And again, this is because you shrunk this huge empire down into the small size of the country. A lot of tribes are still in there. You have the Fars, literally, who are the pure Persians, the only non-bilingual people of Iran who only speak Farsi, have the traditional customs of uh, Persia, the way they do their Nowruz versus the rest of the provinces. It's different. However, somehow, for some reason, it has always been united, regardless of who's from which side or which background. Doesn't matter if you're the Arab of the uh, South, or if you're the Kurd, or you're the Turk, or you're the Fars. It has always been united until the Islamic Revolution, where the country became divided based on Muslims versus non-Muslims. And when I say non-Muslim, Peter, I don't mean Christian or Jew. No, I mean non-Muslims in eyes of the government. Those like Masa Amini, who don't wear the proper hijab, those who don't do the prayer the right way, those who wear the makeup, those who have boyfriend or girlfriends, which is against Sharia. Those are the secondary group of people.
I mean, tell me about when you think 45 years ago, the revolution. What does that mean for freedom within the country? I know it's claimed to be 99% Muslim, but not just religious, but general freedom within the country. What is it like to live in the current, I guess, regime or government in Iran?
I'm so glad you asked that. I was having a discussion with a friend of mine literally yesterday about this, that it has come to a point where the lack of freedom isn't just about your what you say or what you wear or what you eat anymore. The lack of freedom has gotten to a point where majority of Iranians, especially the younger generation, have lost absolute motivation. The answer always is, well, so what? Like, why don't you go get a job? It's like, then what? Why don't you go to school? Do what with it? You literally have Uber drivers. It's not Uber. It's called a Snap, I think, in Iran. When they pick you up, Snap. Um, you sit in the car. And by the way, for those of you, yes, I have not been back to Iran, but I do have people who are in Iran or just came back from Iran. So the information comes from there. Now, I'm not smuggling myself back. You start talking to the driver, and he will tell you that he holds a darn PhD, Peter, but there's no job for him, either because he doesn't belong to IRGC or Sepah or this group of Islam or that group of Islam, or it's the fact that somewhere, somehow, when he was younger, got arrested and has some sort of morality police stamp on his resume, so he won't be hired. or it's the matter of he is not a Muslim, he's a Baha'i, he can't admit he's a Baha'i, they're going to kill him, so he'd rather drive his own taxi than go get killed. It's just literally, there is zero motivation to do anything with your life because one way or another, you'll be blocked by this regime. I genuinely, they wake up in the morning, change their mind about the latest law, and there's nothing to stop them. There is nothing that could have stopped them from changing the laws every hour. Every hour, Supreme Leader can literally wake up this morning and say, color red is forbidden for women. I dare you wear red. They will arrest you. They will probably put you in detention center. They will drag you to Sharia court and then probably, I don't know, lash you a couple of lashes, send you home, make an example out of you. Nobody else going to wear red. Now, I'm making this up as an example, but to that, the small detail of life is being controlled.
Tell us how, within the country, what does it mean for the media? What does it mean for, I mean, some countries like Dubai want to be outward focused, but still want to be Islamic, where other countries like Saudi, it's maybe less so. It's wanting to have that pure Islam, and there is a less focus on being outward looking. When you think of Iran, you think of something which is a closed box, because of the devotion to Islam, and that cuts off the West. So what does that mean within for education, for media?
Okay, so we need to explain something before we even answer that question. By we, I mean me. I identify as me. Okay. Media in Iran. There is no private or alternative media. There's just one type of media which is owned by government, ran by government, approved by government, everything government. There are, I believe, 6 channels of cable, only 6. One is dedicated to news. One is dedicated to sports. And the other 3, one is dedicated to religion, actually. Most of the time, it's like some mullah sitting there dissecting in fatwas and Quran and stuff. And then there are 2 that is a combination: movies, TV series, commercial, news, a little bit, things like that. Now, why am I breaking it down? Is because it is so extremely controlled that it's only 6. Only 6. For example, the sport channel, you'll never find any kind of female competition inside or outside of Iran aired there. You just don't. They cover all of the European leagues, right? The soccer leagues. And you literally see that if they pass by a female audience in a stadium who is wearing makeup or open hair, you literally see them blurred out, and then you come back to zoom back in. To that extent, what is being aired inside the country is controlled. You can make a movie in Iran, but before you make a movie, you got to take your script and your crew names to this department that's going to read the script, either approve it or tweak it, then approve it or reject it. If you get approved on your script, then you go make the movie. But before you air the movie, Peter, they will watch how you make the script. If they find one scene, just one scene that they don't like, they'll have you go either redo it, edit it, come back again. A movie can take 7 years to be released or 2 minutes to be rejected. Doesn't matter how much you spend on your movie. It's done. Won't never come out. So that's the internal.
Mm.
Now, they have one Tanseem is the name of it. I actually report from it a lot. They have one, let's say, kind of like an article or text formatting website that is tied to the regime. And then they have their own Islamic Republic of Iran's broadcasting website. Those are the ones that are being fed propaganda and lies to be published because we outside have access to that. We read that, where it makes it look like the country is flawless and people are super happy and the elections are going fantastic. That is the one for external use that is mainly filled with propaganda.
And how does politics work? How does are there elections? Were there elections before? How does that work in the country?
Yes, there are selections.
Selections.
There are selection. However,
Love it.
it's a It's in your best interest to show up for this election because one, they can create a lot of propaganda video and put it out. Number two, now in Iran, when you vote, they actually stamp, like you use your index on a stamp and you put it on your birth certificate, which Iranian birth certificates are like a lot of booklets. Now, if you have that printer, means you voted. And for example, at the end of the year, when they're giving away coupon for chicken or egg or oil or whatever it is, if you have that fingerprint, you get your coupon. If you don't, well, good luck. Go buy it out of your own pocket. So it's a selection coordinated to look like an election. And if you don't show up, well, there are consequences.
Hmm. Tell me how it is the focus with Iran, with the leadership. Is it for dominance within the region, and then you're clashing with the other Islamic nations, or is it with the destruction of Israel? Because Iran and Israel don't border, I think, isn't Iraq between them? If my Middle Eastern geography is bad, so feel free to correct me. But how to fit it? What is the goal? Is it regional stability and power within the region, or is it focus on hatred towards Israel?
Uh, can I go with all of the above? Is that an option?
You can.
Okay. Internally, the regime or the mullahs, internally, main focus is to reestablish a stability. Because literally from 2009 and the Green Movement, on and on and on, they have lost that stability. Every time there's an uprising, it's becoming a stronger, longer, stronger, more planned. So they're trying to gain that stability they had for the first, I don't know, 27 years of their power. That's number one internally. Now, how do they gain that? Is by creating some sort of dilemma or war for the people of Iran to stand down, because they're, at the end of the day, if you look at the history of Iran-Iraq war for 8 years, people of Iran fought. And I can tell you, I have heard directly from the soldiers or from children of those soldiers that they have always said, we didn't fight for the mullahs, we fought for our country. Okay. So with that, if there is a war going on, even if it's a small, even if it's not major, it doesn't have to be an 8 years war, but the regime can reestablish that stability inside. They do have hatred for Israel. I repeat, when Khomeini arrived in Tehran in 1979, he was driven from the plane airport to the biggest and most, I don't know why it's famous, but famous cemetery in Tehran. They put a chair, he sat on it, and he started talking. The very first thing that came out of his mouth was, let the plan begin. We're going to take down the great Satan and wipe Israel off the map. 47 years ago, they already said what they're planning to do. So that's that. They want to wipe Israel off the map. Is it mainly religious beliefs? Yes, but also it's the fact that they know that as long as Israel exists, Iran will not be able in any shape or form, or the government of Iran regime, rest easy knowing they have the land forever.
But you've got I mean, you could have countries coming together with a focus on a common enemy, which is Israel for everyone. But then you've got obviously Lebanon and Syria, basically failed states. But then you've got Turkey and Saudi and Egypt and the Emirate, Dubai, wanting to assert themselves. So, is there no coming together against a common enemy? Because Iran seems to be very much still out in the cold in regards to relations with other nations around it.
That's a good question. I highly doubt that Iran and Saudi Arabia would ever come together. Again, going back to 1400 years ago, this battle didn't start yesterday and it's not going to end tomorrow. The Saudi Arabia versus Iran, or better yet, Arabs versus Persians war, a battle has been going on for a long time. And is Saudi Arabia targeting Israel enough to put themselves in this scenario? I doubt it. As far as Turkey is concerned, right now, Erdogan is doing a lot of talking. But remember, Erdogan needs to be very careful because they don't want to be kicked out of EU. this much of the country is in Europe. The rest is in Middle East. They work so hard to squeeze themselves into EU. He's gonna have to be very careful because he won't have the allies he has today if he's kicked back into full-on Middle East. That's when Iran's going to come after him. Iran and Turkey, on paper, it might seem all good, but Iran and Turkey don't get along either. All the way from the Caliph of Sunnis until today, the Sunni versus Shia scenario has been going on between Turkey and Iran. So I know Erdogan does a lot of talking. I don't believe unless Russia gets involved, Turkey won't get involved. That's the only time Turkey will get involved, because now Turkey has the approval of Russia to get involved and back Iran.
So let me jump up to the present day, and if my research serves me correct, I don't think Iran has actually struck at Israel since the revolution. And this seems to be, from what I've understood, knowing little about Iranian politics, but it seems to be the first attack on Israel. Is that correct? And how does what Iran have done, the attack on Israel, how does that change things in the region?
You are correct. Yes. Since 79 until today, there has never been a direct strike or attack from Iran toward Israel. But I go back to the fact that we need to acknowledge they are playing it this way, but we need to remember this attack directly was by IRGC. IRGC is Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. It is not Iranian Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. Were they put together by Khomeini? Absolutely. Do they belong to the government of Iran? No. They are their own entity, freely guarding all Islamic nations. That's why you have their children such as Hezbollah and Houthis and Hamas out there. That being said, this is not going to be pleasant to a lot of your audience, but I'll say it. Iran's strike, or IRGC's strike, or Israel's airstrike, neither one of them were strikes. This just doesn't look like anybody's planning to do anything major. Both Iran and Israel have the military means, to do real damage if they wanted to. This whole, in Farsi, we laugh and say, they knock at each other's door and run and hide. Seems like that's what they're doing. They send a couple of missiles, 300, lots of missiles and drones, but then they call and say, heads up, in about an hour and a half, fix up your Iron Dome, so we're about to arrive. When was the last time Hamas gave a heads up, right? October 7th happened, cutting everybody off guard, and they left a mark. You know what I mean? This Iran Saturday strike and this Israel striking back, which, by the way, Iran is absolutely denying the existence of this attack back. And that's what you need to look at. Iran goes saying, okay, we attack. This is it. If you attack back, we're going to be, in a split second, we're going to destroy Israel. Israel attack back, and Iran denies it. Ignores it ever happened. Does that look like something is about to change in the Middle East? No. This is all tied back to Western countries. In America, we're in election year. Whatever happens over there can definitely help Biden over here. Europe is in pretty much a lot of chaos. The test run of, are they going to sit back and let us do whatever we want to do, or are they going to dare try to rescue and get attacked in their own countries with our sleeper cells? That's all there is to this. I'm not downplaying anything, but I know both countries. I've heard and I've seen the capability of both ends. This doesn't look like something that's going to turn into World War III. That's not going to happen.
No, you're right. When I read the reports a day before, 100 rockets are going to be fired over, and talking to people, and they said, seriously, who gives their enemy that much notice? And then the next day, 100 came over to the number. But so you've got that as a show of strength, and I get that as a show of strength, especially drones taking 3 to 4 hours, and it shows you what you can do. But with Iran having so many proxies, I mean, Hezbollah are a serious threat to the region and seemingly much more dangerous than Hamas are, and they're embedded in Lebanon and Syria. How does that play? And does Iran not just use a proxy like Hezbollah to attack Israel instead of firing over what drones that take 4 hours? That's not a serious attack, but Hezbollah do seem to be serious.
Yes, exactly. And that's where I put my thought process. I'm like, okay, you have Hezbollah and you have Hamas. And again, I go back to October 7th. It shocked all of us. Not because we weren't expecting Hamas to be so barbaric. No, it was the fact that nobody called anybody to say, okay, so tomorrow at your music festival, we're coming. That's how you do serious damage. You have Hezbollah, you have Hamas. And I'll go back to what I've said many times, and I've been accused of many things. Israel is not going to take on Iran. You know why? Israel has what it takes to take on Hamas, and they never did. They haven't. I was looking on my Facebook page, and last year, this week is exactly when this Hamas-Israel situation was going on, and Biden was on the phone asking for a ceasefire, which Israel ended up doing the ceasefire. Every year. It's a pattern. It just happens. But for anybody to either get excited or get nervous that something's going to come out of this, no. Hezbollah is regrouping. Yes. Israel is talking about possibly going into Lebanon. Yes. Is any of this going to put an end to this back and forth? I highly doubt it. I do. In no shape or form is it in benefit of anyone involved with globalist groups or elite or deep state, none of whom have any interest in ending this conflict in the Middle East. So it's not going to end one way or another, and it's not going to even start. It's that time of the year where everybody needs to get a little dusty in Middle East, and then everybody's going to go home, and next year we'll repeat. That's just the way things go. And unfortunately, as much as I wish somebody would finally put their foot down and say enough is enough, nobody's going to do that. They're just giving a break to Hamas for now, while Hezbollah is regrouping, IRGC is doing a little bit of maneuvering, and that's it. Now, why is Israel not standing up? Well, that one is a question for Netanyahu.
It's interesting watching because obviously Israel didn't deal with Hamas before. It's now been forced to deal with Hamas, and Israel are going to do what it takes. That's how it seems, and whatever force is needed for them to secure their security, they will go for. But I guess the Islamic nations have been happy for Hamas to be a thorn in the side and for the Palestinians to be a thorn in the side of Israel, because that keeps Israel's defense spending high. It keeps their a threat level high. It keeps that fear. It's perfect to kind of keep Israel nervous and not let them kind of relax, a constant state of war, I guess. What does it mean if Hamas are removed to a degree? Does it then, do those nations around think, what's next? Does Hezbollah then have to come in and provide that? What does that mean for stability? Because it does seem the countries have been happy to sit back and let Hamas do the let's piss off Israel rule.
Well, actually, to emphasize on your point, Hamas and Palestinians were put there exactly for that purpose. Now, I brought this up in a couple of times that I don't, but Western countries, you call them Palestinians. But if you talk to them, talk to Rashida Tlaib, for example, and listen to their chants on the streets of UK, France, US, Canada, anywhere, you don't hear Palestine, you hear Philistine. It's Philistine. The enemies of Jews, Philistine. They were picked. This name was specifically picked. Their location was specifically picked. That's one of the reasons when it comes to the argument of Palestinians versus Israel or the Gaza border. I just opened this up. I'm like, listen, first of all, you don't find an Arabic-speaking person who can say Palestine. Again, my mother tongue of Farsi was not Farsi. It's Parsi. Parsi, the language of the Pars people of Persia. It turned into Farsi because in Arabic language, there's no character as P. They don't say Pepsi, they say Bepsi. How do you expect them to say Palestine? No, we have turned it into Palestine. So we hide the fact that they are the Palestinians, Palestine, the enemies of Jews. So they're put in place and named specifically for that reason. Now, if Israel, for any reason, would finally come to realize that let's just take him out once and for all, and yes, taking out Hamas is very much doable. And that way, they will force the hands of IRGC and Lebanon and Hezbollah of Lebanon to actually take action. That's when Israel will have what they need legally by international law to actually overthrow the regime of Iran. But they won't.
Yeah, and with the Palestinian, we've had Robert Spencer on maybe a month or 6 weeks ago, and I enjoyed his Palestinian myth book. So 100% with you that it is a made up terminology. Can I just add, just to finish off on Iran, and you've been great in giving us a broad sweep, I think, to help us understand, because many of us are completely unaware of not only where the countries fit in together, but where Iran fits in. But what does it mean for Iran and freedom? Because you want individuals to be able to choose where they live, how they live, and to decide they don't want a constant state of tension with their neighbors. What does it mean for Iran going forward? Is there a chance of a revolution in Iran from the people to overthrow the regime and have something which cares about people's rights and freedoms? Or do you not have any great hope for that happening in the near future?
This might come as a surprise. If, Lord willing, comes November and we get President Trump back in the office, within months, there will be an uprising in Iran. The last 2 times people of Iran tried, unfortunately, once was during Hussein Obama, once was Biden, they couldn't get the help they needed. They couldn't get the Biden regime or Obama regime to put sanctions and pressure on the regime. So they ended up losing a lot of lives, either by being killed or being imprisoned and tortured daily. So they went home. I know for a fact if President Trump is back in office, people of Iran will try again. Will they be successful? That's when the Israeli government comes to picture. Again, Iran by itself, people of Iran, first of all, remember, they don't have a Second Amendment. Not only that, there are no illegal guns to be bought either. The borders are extremely protected in Iran. You can't even smuggle them into the country. So they're always empty-handed. Secondly, the very first thing that happened is the regime cuts off the internet access to the people, which adds to the agony of now what? How do we get the message out? How do we get the people to put pressure on the government? So Israel and America's government play a huge role of what will happen internally in Islamic Republic of Iran next. We need all these sanctions back. We need a lot of economic pressure back on Iran, and we need Israel to keep pushing back. Then people of Iran will have what it takes to finally overthrow these people. Am I hopeful? Always. There's always hope. As Robert Spencer said, it's not over until it's over, and it's not over yet. But are people of Iran hopeful? Unfortunately, not really.
Well, I think our viewers echo your thoughts, certainly hoping and praying for a Trump result in November. Anni, I always appreciate you coming on. You set the scene perfectly. So thank you so much for joining us today and explaining the current situation.
Absolutely, my pleasure. Anytime.